Matt Holman, what's up, man?
Jared, how's it going, buddy?
Good. This is Matt Holman, everybody. Ops Unfiltered audience. He is the founder of Subscription Prescription, the founder of Commerce Catalyst. Most people in Utah know what Commerce Catalyst is. They've been at one of the lunch and learns or one of the events, one of your big expos coming up this year.
Absolutely, September.
Second time? Yeah, yep. September. What's the date again?
September 10th.
10th, okay. And where?
It's going to be downtown Salt Lake City.
Awesome. Yeah, we went there last year. It was great. Who are some of the cool sponsors and brands that we're going to
We're super pumped. We just confirmed our title sponsorship with SendLane. I'm a huge Jimmy Kim fan. Just love the product, the community, the way he's marketing his business and helping like revolutionize like the email marketing, Recharge, and then we have quite a few others. So we're really excited. Like feel like we're, kind of growing up in the space and people are starting to pay attention. The whole thing though is about what's going on in Utah. Utah has just an amazing ecosystem here for e-commerce, SaaS, which you're building, and what brands are building. So just really excited to like pull everybody together and celebrate and learn and network together.
And I'm excited to see what happens with Commerce Catalyst because in general, Utah is such a hotbed for e-commerce and e-commerce enablement tech. It really is a unique space and you're one of the only ones who's trying to, there's a couple players
right
in the events and community space, but I like what Commerce Catalyst is doing. You're bringing together the technology providers and the brands in a really cool way.
Absolutely.
We've been sponsors of Commerce Catalyst for a while now.
Yeah, you guys have been supporters from the beginning, so
yep.
I always appreciate you, Ben.
So Matt's also the co-founder, of QPilot, which is a subscription software. It's a little bit different than Recharge and some of the other competitors, but we'll dive into that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So first thing I want to start out with, let's dive into Subscription Prescription, and I've got some questions for anybody who has a subscription model in their e-commerce business. What is Subscription Prescription? Why did you start it?
Yeah, absolutely. Like Subscription Prescription started, so my partner at QPilot, David Bradley, we were trying to figure out, we were primarily a WooCommerce plugin in our platform, and we were looking at trying to get into Shopify. So Subscription Prescription originally started as just like a newsletter to try to acquire leads in the subscription space. So with the ultimate goal of flipping them to QPilot. That was our initial premise. But what we started to find was so many people were just starving to figure out subscriptions. There's not a lot of content. There's not a lot of education. There are very few or enterprise only consultants. And so what we found was like, wow, there's this big opportunity here where we might not be able, and they weren't interested in flipping. They're like, no, I'm on this platform, or I just migrated to this platform. I don't want to migrate again. I just want to get better at my own platform.
What do you mean by figuring it out? From an outsider's perspective, as somebody in the ERP space who, all I know is the brands that do subscriptions have more trouble with inventory management. So yeah. I'm sure it's much deeper than that. Why?
Well, think about this. When you sell a fulfillment system, like you're selling generally to somebody who is an expert at their own fulfillment. And sometimes they're an expert at fulfillment, period, meaning they've done it at several companies and stuff like that. Subscriptions is a little bit less common. So you'll usually have somebody that only really knows their own business, or maybe they've run subscriptions at one other brand. It's rare to run into people that like blew up a subscription program, go to another one, blow that up. You just don't see that happening very, very often. So there's just a lack of expertise and experience in the space. And there's not a lot of like, again, education resources. In most apps or software platforms are the ones that are delivering that. So like there's 2 subscription conferences in the entire country. The entire country, every year, there's 2. Sub Summit, which is kind of agnostic and very high level, which is in Dallas this year. And the other is called ChargeX, and that's hosted by Recharge. So if you're not on Recharge, like where do you go to like connect and learn with other people in the subscription space? It's like it doesn't, just hard to come by resources in that way.
So it sounds like Recharge sort of dominated the industry from the beginning, but that's changed. There's so many different use cases that maybe Recharge can't handle. And
Yeah, definitely. I think it's also a question of like, being a market maker, right? Like they actually, I think what has happened is since Recharge had their pricing structure initially was like, they're charging a percentage of a processing fee. So every time an order would process, they would be able to collect some money off of that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's actually very profitable as far as apps go, because it's instead of just charging $100 a month, you could potentially get to several thousand, or for large brands, tens, 20, hundreds of thousands of dollars in just software revenue from a really large brand that's running subscriptions successfully. So that sparks other people developing different products, coming after the problem a different way. So it's been really fun to watch all these different apps go after it. Initially, it was just like Recharge and Bold, and now there's 50 of them.
So break down. I'm curious about this. Break down the subscription tech landscape for e-commerce. If I'm a brand, say I'm doing like $2 million a year, I decide to spin off a subscription model for my business. Who are the players that I'm going to be looking at?
Yeah, so the top players in this space are still Recharge. Then you get into it's like the next tier of up and comers. Like Bold has been in the space for a long time, but the apps that have been developing, I think the most strongly within subscriptions are Stay AI, Skio, Loop, Smarter. You've had AppStore is one that's been around for a long time.
I didn't know Loop. I thought Loop was a returns platform.
Loop, there's Loop Returns and Loop Subscriptions. They are two different companies.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So then you have AppStore, and then you have a few others like Seal that have been around actually for a while and have pretty big subscriber bases.
No wonder it's so confusing. So like how does a brand navigate? How do I even know which one to choose?
Yeah, I mean, that's the hard part is like, and so one of the things we do with our content, and so the kind of like coming back to this whole story of subscription prescription is David and I are sitting there looking at this landscape thinking like, wow, we should just try harder to be a resource for more people. And so David's my partner on subscription prescription still, and we're still trying to like fight for that, creating content. Now, like I spend probably 98% of my time, if it's not on Catalyst, then on consulting and trying to help people figure out subscriptions, because it's kind of one of these weird things where, I mean, imagine if you had to figure out shipping and fulfillment, or like how you manage your inventory, and your marketing team, like, well, I guess that does happen, because if marketing starts to sell out of a product and you don't have that inventory available, it causes problems.
Mm-hmm.
But imagine that if you could get better at how you did marketing, it would directly influence your ability to fulfill products. And that's what happens with subscriptions is everybody thinks it's all retentions, and software is built for retention. But the hardest part about subscriptions is acquiring subscribers. And so you have to be able to connect like this whole big picture, and subscription app tech is only part of that problem.
That's interesting. So it sounds like a big problem that people don't think about is how their subscription platform connects with all of their other parts of their inventory, their marketing,
absolutely,
customer acquisition,
from a technical side, and then from like an information or person resource side. So if you think about it, like you'll have a typical e-commerce companies running either with an agency or they have some in-house growth people. They're running ads. They're trying to drive sales. They're trying to hit certain targets around like customer acquisition costs, things like that, right? And then you have, and that generally will push people into subscriptions. Sometimes they'll try to prioritize offers or not, but they're pushing people into the funnel. And then on the other side of that, you have a fulfillment team on the retention side. So like your email marketers, CRM managers, people like that. E-commerce manager maybe who's like trying to manage the subscription health, retention, keep people on as long as possible. Mm-hmm. Those two things, two like groups are often siloed from each other. The information is not shared across the board. Or
what's a common tech stack that you see that silos information?
It's really just comes down to like where you're getting your analytics. So like if I'm using Recharge or Skio or Stay or any of those that I mentioned, I only see analytics related to retention, my actual subscriber platform, right? The growth team is building out stuff in Triple Whale, right? And you're using Lifetimely or another like analytics app that's trying to unify some of that information. But then you also have to go take a step further and go, okay, how is the projected lifetime value of this cohort that my growth has just brought in and my retention team's trying to help? How can I influence that at the same time? And so it's difficult. You have to unify data, which is a big problem for everybody in every space ever, but and being able to make better decisions. But it's also like how you set up projects, how you set up tests, campaigns you're running, what you're trying to prioritize.
All right, that makes sense. Now, again, let's go back to our brand example. How would you, what are the questions that I should ask myself as a brand to diagnose which software I even need to choose?
Yeah. So the biggest thing is like trying to start nailing down like prime use cases for your customers and understanding your customer experience. So in general, a typical, like if I'm selling pet food, for example, and that's it, people buy a bag of pet food or not, that's a pretty basic subscription process. They pick the frequency, they put in their payment, that's it. There's nothing really technical there from like that almost any app wouldn't be able to solve. So it really from at that point comes down to what do you like the look of and how do you like the analytics for what your team wants to pay attention to, and then getting referrals related to support. Because when you
say the look of, you're talking about like the checkout experience.
Yeah, like the design of the widget, how the portal looks, that kind of thing.
Sorry, random side tangent. Is there anybody that allows you to customize that experience, or does everybody? Or?
You can, but it's like the basic thing is like, okay, what do I get out of the box, right? Like, yes, many brands are optimizing or customizing things, but maybe they don't necessarily need to be, or a lot of them just aren't doing it.
That's interesting. Well, why? What? Like, where's an example where somebody thinks they need to customize something, but
yeah,
in reality they don't need to.
So a great example is like Dr. Squatch. It's one I like to point out all the time because they have this amazing brand, all these different products related to soaps, fragrance soaps. They have, again, if you ever want to see a great example of just like diverse product line, Dr. Squatch.
I love that.
Yeah. So, but what's makes really interesting is that they have one of the like go-to build a bundle subscription experiences in the space. So if you go to their site and you want to say like you got sucked in by an ad for like Jurassic Park smelling soaps, which yes, they have, you go in there and you start putting together a bundle, you pick a certain number of soaps, and it's a step-by-step process. And then periodically they'll interject an upsell option. And then they're trying to get you to subscribe to that and check out. Now that build a bundle experience is fairly technical and a lot of complications related to not just design, but how you handle bundles and cart restrictions around the amount you can put in there, stuff like that. So for a team that's like doing $1 million a month in revenue, or you know, even if you're a $10 million a year brand, like that actually might be a little bit of an expensive undertaking.
Yeah.
You know, if you're before that point, the question is always like, how will this actually impact my business?
Yeah. Why optimize something that's brand new? You don't even know what you're trying to optimize.
Right. So if you think like, if the bottom line though is like, this is again, one of these questions around subscription philosophy is, if I'm asking like a brand that I consult with, they have an amazing retention, but their initial front end purchase experience for subscriptions is a little bit hard to get into and figure out. So for them, it's like all about, we need to start investing in making that simpler and streamlining that smooth, because we know when we get somebody on the subscription, we can keep them around for a really long time. So it's those types of questions like, is there bundling involved? Am I doing prepaid? Am I doing gifts? Like all these different elements. Like, am I buying multiple items together, or is it a single SKU? How often do I upsell people into things? How often do people make changes? Right? Those types of questions related to a program is what you need to be asking, because again, if I have a subscription where it's one product and I literally only sell one product, what do I care if the portal has like swapping features for other SKUs at this point? I don't need it, right? And that is an oversimplification because most people are selling more than one SKU. But if I don't have a lot of people that are changing flavors, so if I'm selling like like fragrant soaps, but most people buy only one soap over one flavor or scent their entire life, why do I need to engage in like really fancy like swapping features?
Yeah.
Right? Unless maybe there's a churn reason that I've started to click. And that's ultimately what happens is people leave software because there's a bad support reason. There's like a new hire, or they're seeing a feature on another platform that they think will be compelling for their business. And a lot of times it's not, or the program, the platform they left can actually do that. But there's been some difficulties like getting through support or getting the right person, or you have to pay for it. That's another thing. Like if you're on like Recharge and you want to get something customized, you have to hire an agency or developer to customize those things for you. Whereas like maybe Stay has built that feature already, or is willing to build that feature to win your business because they're smaller, they're more nimble. Like it's a different, I mean, you deal with this, right? With enterprise level brands versus smaller startups. Like you're more nimble, you're willing to take on more risk, trying to build stuff as, you know, you're building as the ship is sailing, as opposed to Recharge, which is they're having their kind of own set. They have a process around their sales and their implementations and all those things. So it's a little bit different. And if you're small, you run into that and then you think, oh, well, maybe it's going to be easier if I go over here.
Okay. Well, walk me through QPilot. So who is a good fit for QPilot? What is the primary difference between QPilot and Recharge or Stay?
I'd say like the different. So QPilot has integrations into Shopify and WooCommerce. On Shopify, we're pretty much like very similar to a lot of the other apps. Other apps might have better design functionality. QPilot though is very much, especially on Shopify, like logistics and B2B focused. So we have solutions around like shipping outcomes, delivery times, things like that. If you're on WooCommerce, there isn't a Recharge on WooCommerce.
Give me an example of shipping options and delivery times. Like when is that relevant?
Yeah, absolutely. So like if you think about like within subscriptions, again, if you're ordering soap, who cares when it shows up, right? Like you get it when you get it and it's fine. And hopefully you're not living your life on the razor's edge where you're going to run out of soap for one day.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So, but that use case, while that is typically how most people thought of like subscriptions, is starting to change and evolve where, I might have pet food where I need to get a bag shipped sooner because my kid spilled a bunch of water on the bag. Or the real prime use case is around perishables, fresh food, or how you're picking things up. So like if you're getting like a steak of the month club and you're going to be out of town on a long weekend and you don't know when your order is going to show up, then now that steak is sitting there on your porch going bad. And what does the customer do? They refuse it, return it, complain to the brand, and then that product is lost because it's perishable. And so there are a lot of like use cases like that. The other thing really does come down to like also like related to fulfillment, how things get bundled and kitted, right? So like if a lot of brands say they have a starter kit where we're selling a bag of tea and a cup and a little swizzle stick or something like that, the way we set up our bundles on our site is that's just one SKU. We didn't use like a bundle app. And so that SKU goes onto the subscription. How do we then pull out the tea, which continues on a subscription, and leave the other things off? Or how do we then push that stuff into fulfillment and those items get fulfilled in the correct way? There's a lot of like potentially logistic complications around how you're managing bundles and things like that.
Got it. And so that's where QPilot has carved out a little niche.
Yeah, QPilot's just built a little bit differently in a unique way, especially, and again, I would highlight on WooCommerce is where our strongest differentiation is. On Shopify, there's some functionality that's similar to Recharge. But yeah, logistics, inventory management, some of those things were a little bit farther along, but where other apps I think do a lot better job, to be like perfectly blunt, is on some of the design features, some of the portal functionality.
Like designing the intricate customer experience of going.
Yeah, like what the portal looks like and the type of actions you can take and things like that, like Klaviyo integration, stuff like that. We have a Klaviyo integration, but there's some like Stay and Recharge. Like Recharge has been building with Klaviyo for years, so they're like well advanced in that regard.
Interesting. Okay. Well, I'm just genuinely curious. Yeah. Where does Stay fall? Like what's their specialty? Who do they attract the most?
I think Stay, like it's probably, I think a good way to like, the way I think about it is that Stay is started by Gina and Pearson, two like absolutely amazing like marketers. Gina is a like retention marketer extraordinaire. So like she was one of the co-founders of Lunar Solar Group and like, which is a big agency out of New York. And so if you think about it, she's just been really great at focusing on like what actually drives retention. So Klaviyo integration being really, really strong, like looking at A/B testing options or offers to surprise and delight people to get them to renew. Their portal does really well. They bought Retention Engine, I think about a year and a half ago, which is like a e-commerce, like a cancellation engagement flow service and stuff. So, and then again, I think their team does a really great job of like marketing what they do and trying to transform like subscription experiences for brands.
What's been your experience now with subscription prescription? In other words, going the route of education where, you frankly, you might lose, you could try to just jam everybody into QPilot, but you're really going the route of like, no, this market is big. Like, we just want to sell somebody who's a good fit. What's been your experience building that? Has it helped QPilot ultimately, or? I mean,
it's helped QPilot recently land like a pretty decent sized customer on WooCommerce, and like, and I think like for QPilot, again, like talking about like from a software development standpoint, like you see a landscape, and we saw so much opportunity and still see so much opportunity in subscriptions, but Shopify has just become so incredibly complex when it comes to trying to get your app in front of people. Yeah. So for us at QPilot, we're focusing on what we think we do best, which is like some B2B and logistics features on Shopify. And then WooCommerce, we're just doubling down there because there's still a ton of brands on WooCommerce. And there isn't an app ecosystem in the same way that it exists on Shopify, where people are building and iterating so fast and things are standardized. Like there's just a lot of like ad hoc, like cobbled together solutions on WooCommerce, which is why David started building there in the first place, is he saw that product opportunity.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like how we're focusing at. But so what's interesting with subscription prescription is as I spend less time on the marketing side of QPilot, I still help with partnerships. A lot of subscription prescription is open doors into all these other apps, all these other players, understanding who they are, their software, and again, trying to help people understand it. Like for me, I'm very much personally driven by education and empowerment and trying to like help people do better. And so for me, it's actually a lot more meaningful to be on the subscription. So instead of trying to sell software, I'm selling like solutions and outcomes to help people do better in their business and build better recurring revenue.
Yeah,
so it's been really fun to do that.
I relate to that a lot. As you know, with Luminous, we try to go the route of, I'm not going to try to shove Luminous down your throat.
Right.
Like if it's a good fit, then great. If not, I'd love to just educate you from what we've learned about inventory solutions.
Yeah. And we've talked to we've talked to clients together before.
Yeah.
And I love your approach on that. It's like very much like trying to help people figure out how to do this. Is there a better way to do this? Or do you actually need something different than that?
Teaching them how to diagnose this, because they might think that they need this one feature, but they actually don't. It's just, it's actually just they're not thinking about the problem correctly.
Yeah. And so, I had an interesting experience with a call very recently where somebody was talking about related to cancellation flows. And I won't get too specific because it's something that they're doing and I don't necessarily want to make them feel bad about this. I told them this on the call, but the idea is that they're worried about trying to make cancellation a little bit harder so that people think about it longer. Right? Which is a very typical response in most subscriptions. But the problem is with that approach, you're focusing on the people that are kind of either at the fringe or that are on their way out the door, whereas your focus with subscription experiences should be on the people that are trying to stay.
I love that. How
do you enable better experiences for the people that like the product and just need something fixed or to be better, or that you can market to them better that are already there as subscribers? And so it's very much a different focus, right? You're like, okay, I'm worried about all these people. I don't want to lose these people. Well, I have all these other subscribers I could sell more to, acquire more like them, figure out what they want, build what they want, that kind of thing. And so that often is the mistake, is trying to put the focus in the wrong place.
It's an old school way of thinking. It reminds me back when, have you ever tried to, like these old companies like Comcast or Dish, obviously still around, but like, I mean, go look at the customer reviews. It all comes from like cancellation fees and how difficult it is to cancel. I totally agree. Right. Modern brands, whether it's tech or consumer products, you should be focusing on an amazing experience. And if somebody doesn't want it, great. That's
what I love with like some of those players is that they're trying to they're learning how to bundle their stuff together. So it's like, hey, if you like Comcast, you get free 6 months of Netflix or something like that. So they're trying to figure out how they can try to get it, because they know that people they might have cable, but they're also still going to have streaming services, right? Very few people don't. So yeah, that should always be like the subscription best practice is like my thing that I'm always harping on, is just trying to figure out what you can enable for your best subscribers. Because we all forget this. This happens in every aspect of business. And it's kind of cheesy to quote the Pareto rule, right? Where it's like 20% of your customers are probably driving 80% of your revenue. And it might even be more like 10 and 90, I think, for a lot of brands. But the idea is you have a segment of customers that are incredibly valuable to your business. Are you building more for them? Or are you building something that will unlock more value for them? So like sometimes if you talk about loyalty, you wonder, are loyalty points driving revenue for my business, or is it just something some people like to do and I give away product or discounts because of that? So it's like that mentality of trying to figure out how can I get more money from the people that like spending money with me?
I'm curious, these days, do you see how many businesses that you see are a pure subscription play? That's it.
I'd say quite a few. Like it's still, I'd say like the most common one, at least within Ecom, is that you have people that have a subscribe and save option. So they're selling pet food or protein powder or a beauty product, and there's a subscription option. There's still plenty of subscription like focused businesses, but they're typically like either subscription boxes, or there are some brands that have grown just by promoting a subscription only. Like you can only get the product through a subscription.
Do you believe that brands nowadays should expand their offering from, for example, if you're just a pure subscription play, that's the only way to get your product. Do you think are they losing out on revenue?
No, I mean, it's a good question, but it's like, again, like based off of all these stuff talking about whether you should be evaluating new software or not, it's like taking a step back. What is the demand from your existing customers, right? So like, do they want, like if you're selling coffee and you have a really fun brand, maybe there's an opportunity for merch, right? And so that's not maybe what you didn't grow up thinking I'm going to start a coffee brand to sell more t-shirts, but hey, my customers love our brand and we have fun branding, so let's offer merch for that, right? Or hey, we're selling coffee and a lot of people keep talking about like indigestion, so we're going to sell a probiotic. Like maybe that normally wouldn't make sense, but if you're getting customer feedback that like people would really like a, say, mushroom-based probiotic because you're selling mushroom coffee. So it is really kind of like starting to like pay attention to what people want. Like an endurance supplement that I love called X Endurance. It's like a supplement you take to help you like be stronger, faster on runs and CrossFit. They launched a skincare brand.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, which totally seemed really weird, and I bought it. Well, because it's one of those funny things as a buyer, like I'm super skeptical of skincare I see online, and yet their supplement is amazing. Like all those claims about stuff like this will make you fat, like no, it really did. So when they go, hey, we made a skincare, I'm like, oh, well, I trust the brand enough, I'm going to try it, because normally I would say bullshit, but it's like, oh no, you guys know what you're talking about. The interesting thing, like interviewing their team, because they've been on my podcast, is they talked about, they view skincare was actually just as a way to add more value to their membership base. It wasn't so much to be a lead customer acquisition product. They weren't going to turn into a new skincare competitor to all these other skincare brands. But if you're a member inside X Endurance, they want to just dump value on you, from like gift cards and coupons to other brands that are outdoor brands, like the dollar cash back and stuff like that. And now like skincare products and other things that they can just offer to their discounts. Maybe they make some profitability on it, but they're able to drive more purchases from their membership segment of their customers because of that.
Got it. For anybody listening who is, they're already selling their products on Shopify or other channels, they're thinking about getting into the subscription game. What advice would you have for them? When do you know to start a subscription side of your business?
Yeah, I mean, there's two ways to look at it. Like the first is if it's a replenishable product or something that somebody's going to use fairly consistently. Like, I mean, I've tried to talk mattress companies into selling sheet subscriptions before, but this is years ago. So you could potentially like do something like that, but it's better if it's something that gets used on a daily, weekly, or maybe monthly basis. The other thing is like looking at your repeat purchase rates. Is like if you're already getting a lot of people that are coming back, a lot of the brands that are new to subscriptions that I've worked with are doing that because like, hey, we've been getting requests from our customers that are asking for it. Like, why don't you have a subscription option? I buy from you all the time. Give me a discount and I'll be on a subscription. So there's like that feedback and looking at repurchase rates. If you're getting like higher than a 20% repeat purchase rate on your site, like you should be looking at offering a subscription.
I think so many. Personally, I see a lot of brands that get into subscriptions where they just kind of half-ass it. Yeah. And because I think it's attractive from a number standpoint, especially like in the days where fundraising for e-commerce companies, they were getting crazy valuations, everybody was getting gobbled up. Subscription was it was so attractive because like, oh wow, we can up our LTV like crazy, and we can have true ARR, and we can get a multiple on that. And I think there are a lot of brands who, between like 2017 and 2021-ish, just from my perspective, in that span, they spun off a subscription part of their business, and they didn't really focus on it. They weren't focused on value, right, which seems to be the theme of everything you're talking about. Everything should be focused on, is this bringing my ideal customer value?
Right. And so if we think about too, like I think there's a huge problem that I've seen, especially in the last 2 years in within e-commerce, is that, brands put a ton of resources into growth, naturally so. They're trying to acquire customers and grow and hit new revenue numbers and all that stuff. And so a lot of their resources, headcount, dollars spent, all that stuff goes into acquisition. And then subscriptions are often an afterthought. They're often managed by a retention marketer who might be an email expert, but that has very little actual subscription experience, or an e-commerce manager who's managing like 50 different fires at any given time. Where are they supposed to either find the time to start testing and optimizing like retention, or actually like investing in it, where like we're going to launch like a campaign specifically for subscribers and things like that. But yes, very much so in the space, it's like almost like, hey, we're running this amazing marketing campaign and we get about 20% of people that come in the door join our subscription program. We have a couple flows set up. We send them a gift at month 3 and that's about it. And then we wonder why it doesn't grow, or why those, like if you're not looking at it from a value like of like the lifetime contribution margin, like the profitability on average for a customer, like how are you making the right decisions on who you should be going after? Like, I mean, the simplest little hack that I do across like all the time is do you know which product is most popular on your subscription? And not just count, but the length of time. I've looked at brands that sell 3 products and they don't even know that product A actually has a 2 times higher lifetime value than the other 2 products, because it lasts on average on subscriptions twice as long.
Interesting.
And so but then when you see that, and then you see the front end of their website and their sales funnel, they're not prioritizing product A at all. They're just pushing it to the site, or they're running on both things. They're not differentiating. And that's where I was saying there's a silo. Is if I told a growth team, hey, out of our 3 products, product A is worth a customer's worth twice as much. So now your CAC, cost to acquire customer, actually, we can afford to double it for product A. Like any growth team on the planet is going to just salivate over that and just go hard and sell out of product A for you. And product B and C become an upsell or some other add-on that you can do.
How much money are brands leaving on the table by not optimizing their subscription?
Yeah, I think it's all just a question of like, I think that for most, it depends. Some brands I've seen like double or triple in size because they took a different approach.
That's what I think is so interesting about subscription business models, is like the stakes are so high.
They're so high
to not optimizing your flow.
But in general, I'd say even just spending a few more hours a week for any brand, you should be able to get 10, 20, or 30% like month over month growth on your subscription recurring revenue.
Yeah. Well, what does your process look like with subscription prescription? I know you consult for other clients. Who's a great fit for you to dive in and do a discovery call?
Yeah, like I do stuff from whether you're starting out up to enterprise. Like my largest client, 200,000 subscriptions. So like I've seen all kinds of different sizes. I think for me, the clients that I do the best with are ones that are in the process of growing and trying to figure out how to grow better. So it's hard when somebody isn't growing, or they're like, their customer acquisition side has gone stagnant, to say, well, hey, I can improve retention by 10%, but it's not going to matter that much because you don't have a lot of people coming in the door. So when there's a growth team, or you're growing pretty quickly, or there's some maybe too many fires for you to manage, especially when it comes to subscriptions, that's when I can be really lethal. So my whole process is really like, again, and I've said it several times, if somebody hasn't maybe figured it out, is I'm trying to unify the acquisition and the retention side. So like that example I just mentioned, it's easy to tell a brand, hey, I'm identifying products on retention that are worth more than others. When people buy those, we need to prioritize those in the purchase process, right? Or like, hey, we need to change how we're managing upsells up front because it has a direct impact on retention downstream. Trying to increase user adoption. So a lot of what I do is like starting very much like with buyer psychology, buyer behavior of, a perfect case in point is like, say you're selling a device, maybe you're selling like an electric nose hair trimmer. Like, I don't think of anybody doing that, so nobody can be mad at me for picking on them. So you're selling an electric nose hair trimmer. And so I can just tell you right now that something like that like doesn't necessarily get used every day. So if somebody buys one and where the subscription is like the replacement heads for like making sure you clean, is how do you tell somebody like to remind them that they need to change that? Or how do you demonstrate the value of like, of how they, why they need to be using that regularly? And a lot of churn issues to devices or products come down to like people never used it in the first place. They subscribed to something, it sat on their shelf for a couple of months, they got a couple of replenishment things, they never used it. So too much product, which is a common issue in subscriptions, is actually too much product because I never used it. So like if instead of like throwing a discount for that person is going to get you nothing.
Yeah,
right. So before we get into testing with like offering discounts, we should look at how well a job we're doing at increasing adoption. Are we showing people how to use the nose hair trimmer? Are we explaining the importance of replacing the trimmers regularly? Like all those things.
It's just a much deeper funnel.
Right.
Like it's not just acquiring the customer. It's what happens after that. Right. Why didn't they use it? Why aren't they coming back?
I mean, I'm sure you've seen that with Luminous, right? How many times, like if you onboard somebody to new software and then you walk away and then 6 months later, you shocked if they leave to go somewhere else because you never helped them like make sure like it was implemented and being used correctly.
Yes.
Like, right. Like you can't let that happen. Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's what's so interesting is the subscriptions aren't often thought of that way. And I think maybe that's what's weird of coming from the SaaS side is I'm always thinking about how do I get somebody to start using it right away?
Yeah,
how do
I think that's your superpower is you came from a SaaS perspective, which honestly, even when I think about subscriptions for consumer products, it just seems like, oh, I just selling products. Like, actually, no, it's like SaaS. It's like selling Luminous.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah. I mean, I think about like the examples I love is if you ever downloaded like a sleep app on your phone and the onboard
or a dieting app.
Yeah. Or a dieting app or a scheduling app. The onboarding for those apps is ridiculous. It could take you 10, 20, maybe 30 minutes to answer all their questions and configure all this stuff. And you're going to pay them $30 a month for the app or something like that, but you're doing it because it could potentially change your life. And when we look at D2C subscriptions, if you're selling like a focus pill or a sleep aid or like a workout supplement, you actually have the same opportunity to potentially change somebody's life. Yet, how much are you investing in information gathering, making sure you're personalizing it, and then making damn well sure that the product's being adopted and used in the right way.
Yeah.
And that to me is where a lot of my work is like, hey, do people even know how to do this? Like your unboxing thing only talks about how cool your brand is. It actually doesn't explain how to, or the explanation's like a QR code somebody goes to. Why isn't that the whole pamphlet in the initial shipment is how this works.
What are the top things that you see the best subscription brands do?
Yeah, I think it comes down to engagement. I think the best subscription brands are looking for ways to get feedback from people all the time, whether they like something or not. They're looking for ways to create some kind of exclusive feeling, some kind of access, some kind of community, right? Like a great example would be Chewy as a subscription, right? Like probably have all heard about maybe these stories of like somebody's pet passes away, they go to cancel their subscription, they tell Chewy buys them flowers. And so it's like this, that is an interesting touch point. But what ends up happening is every other Chewy user, when they see that, just gets like a little bit of pride and like feels a little bit more connected because they know that they're like their product, their subscription company like cares about them. Right. Yeah. So I think like thinking about engagement in that way, like again, understanding like what do people really want? Do people want you to just give them something and leave them alone, or they want to make it really easy to like manage and make adjustments and changes? I think that whenever you're looking at what the best apps do, whether it's the Dollar Shave Clubs of the world, like a lot of these enterprise level that have been around for a long time, it is really, really easy to manage. It is really, really easy to add other products or to try other things. And they're looking for ways to either push you into a community or to try to get you to feel like you identify with their brand in some way.
Okay. Well, I think this is a great segue into something else I want to talk about. Talk about community, building a community. Obviously, you've done this twice now, or you are currently doing this twice with Subscription Prescription and Commerce Catalyst. You and I relate to this. We relate about this a lot. Right. Building a personal brand. Why? Why are you building subscription prescription? Why Commerce Catalyst? Why are you putting yourself out there on Twitter with your podcast, LinkedIn?
Yeah, when I started trying to like figure out my professional career and stuff, I felt like the people that I gravitated the most were personalities, right? Like, you know, I remember looking back and thinking like, you know, is there anybody cooler on LinkedIn than Nick Staggy, right? Like, and seeing how active he was, and he would share and personal stuff, right? Like Levi Lindsay, Patrick Williams, Lindsay Ivey,
Scott
like
Paul.
yeah, Scott Paul before he got kicked off LinkedIn, right? So I've seen all that, and I think that while I'm never going to be a sports influencer, I'm not going to be like any of those other things. Like I am trying to be a personality or a force for good inside of like connectivity and like education and community. And so for me, like that's a big reason why I do it, is that's what motivates me and what I've seen work and why I'm investing in it. And I do think that long term, that's the right business decision as well. It's not about just paid ads. It's not just about like being a great blog writer. It's about being a personality that people like want to show up for.
Did you have any moments before you started filming content and putting it out there where you just got super nervous or insecure? Like, man, what are people going to think about me? Do you feel like an idiot sometimes? Am I smart enough?
I get insecure all the time. It's generally more around like somebody isn't returning an email or a call, and I think, oh, they hate me now. Like that happens all the time, and I have to just like tell myself that they're just as busy as I am. I'm just on unread. Like it's okay, or I need to bug them a little bit just to remind them, kind of thing. But I think it's more about after the fact. Like going into it, I'm always like, yeah, this is a great idea. And then afterwards I'm like, oh, why did I do that? Or why did I think like, or it's like, hey, I didn't get any business out of that. Like a lot of the work that you do with the personal branding is, it's not like I make this joke that people run into me and they're like, oh, I'm seeing your LinkedIn all the time. Like you're doing amazing. I'm like, well, you have no idea how much revenue that made for me.
Yeah.
You don't know how that's actually impacted my business or not. Like, like 2 years ago, like I would never like to think that I was like one of those fake it till you make it guys. I wasn't posting pictures of me with a jet or any crap like that. But I was trying to create, I'm trying to create content and be helpful, which people like and they appreciate. But how does that translate into business, right? So like the community stuff initially, I was just trying to share marketing tips and stuff, and it was started as a marketing community. I didn't think it would end up with like a big annual conference and like a Slack community with 1,000 people in it. Like I didn't think it would be that.
Yeah, I think what most people don't think about is that, or rather, when they start building a personal brand, when they start posting online, they're thinking, I'm going to build something and monetize them.
Right.
So it doesn't necessarily work like that. Like right. you have to think like, I'm going to bring value, and like you said, to build a community. You might not even know what you're going to monetize in the future, but right. You're focused on value first. And I say this to everybody trying to build a personal brand, like you're going to eat shit for a year. I'm still eating shit.
I eating like a year or longer. We mentioned Jimmy Kim and Senlane. Like it's so easy to think that like the last year or two of Jimmy's content and how much pipeline it's driven and grown his business, it's easy to think, oh, like Senlane's been around since 2022. It's like, no, Senlane's been around since like 2017.
Yes.
Like how much content, like Jimmy shared a video with me the other day of like an old YouTube he made from like 10 years ago. He's like, yeah, I've been talking about email for a really long time. And so I think that's like, to me, that's where I try to keep that at all times. I'm trying to remind myself, yes, I'm trying to drive revenue for this month. I'm trying to like sell another sponsorship or land another client. But I'm also like long-term, oh, I'm getting doors opened here. This person's inviting me to do this, or like I'm asking to be collaborate on that. Long term, I'm seeing like the right signals go in that direction. And for me, a lot of the work that I do is I'm trying to create more content all the time. Like we were recording a video course in the same studio yesterday, but and that I'm going to sell. But I'm trying to figure out like with other content, how do I create content that maybe like get somebody to want to reach out to me for help instead of it just being all give.
Yeah.
How do I start peppering in the right content where I'm like, hey, by the way, I do consulting, or hey, by the way, this is a problem I call out a lot. If you have this problem, this is how I would fix it if we were working together. Have
you heard jab, 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 right hook from Gary Vaynerchuk?
Yeah.
It's building a personal brand has been like one of the most interesting things this past year for me. You feel like you're eating shit. You feel like nobody's watching you. Because I mean, to be fair, like your YouTube videos are getting like 20 views,
right,
or 7 or 60, and then every once in a while you get a couple hundred. But what I always found interesting, I wasn't concerned about the business outcome. I just kept posting, and you just wake up one day and all of a sudden, what we noticed at Luminous is everybody in Utah in the e-commerce space, like they knew who we were.
Right.
And it was like, wait, what? This is actually working. Like people actually know who we are. And this is helping us close deals. Right. Like they're interacting with it. Oh, so like of those 25 views, like one of those did really matter. Right. And well, everybody thinks we're legit. And it's just interesting. You wake up one day after just a year of being consistent, eating shit and iterating your content and trying to optimize. And you find out like, wow, like people actually know who we are.
And people like I ran into like one of the Harmon brothers here in Utah, and he's like, "Man, I love your LinkedIn content." I'm like, "Really?" Like
you're like you watch
wow.
it.
Like I like awesome, thank you. Like that happens. Like I think it happens all the time, and I think that's the hard part is like figuring out that jab, right? Like hook thing. Like where's the cadence in for that? And then, I'm still working on like a lot of the work that I do with my clients is like in some ways is proprietary. So it's not like I can show everybody what we did, but I can maybe make some case studies. So that's the other piece of the puzzle is like, okay, how do I take successes and share them in a way that my customer isn't going to care about, but potential customers will find like interesting and stuff. Cause you have to draw the line between here's all the shit that was going on and what we fixed and then what happened versus like, oh, there was a 20% increase in this. Like, you need something a little bit more of substance in between.
What is the platform most slept on?
Like for platform for what? Like social or subscriptions or
B2B companies acquiring leads. What is the platform that companies sleep on most for acquiring B2B leads?
Inside e-commerce, it's Twitter. I'm not sure it gets slept on because I think everybody knows D2C Twitter is still pretty active.
So that's funny because I
know you talked about like
that was like the one I've never been a Twitter person. So when you told me that, and then I started poking my head in Twitter, I'm like, damn, everybody is here on Twitter. Like.
But it's very much, and one of the like peculiarities of, well, maybe it's everything. I mean, I've been in e-commerce for long enough. Maybe I just feel like it's unique in that way, but it's very much like a copycat space. It's very much everybody's trying to figure out what everybody else is doing. Everybody likes to argue about some of those things that are working or not. Like, the joke is like, make a comment around Facebook cost caps, and you'll get like this huge like diatribe of people going back and forth. Ask which subscription app is best. And you'll get all of D2C Twitter like coming out of the woodwork to like comment or vote for who they like. So cool. It's fun. But yeah, I have a tenth. Like I told you, I have a tenth of the audience on Twitter than I do on LinkedIn, and I get more business from Twitter. And the best part is Twitter. It's so easy to retweet. If I get somebody that has a bit of a thought leader in the space that tweets about something about me or like shares something we might have worked on together, that makes my followers spike and it gets me inbound better than anything else.
Something interesting about people in my friend group, I find it really common that people have a drive to start community, especially in Utah. It's a really big thing. I don't know why, but people have this drive to start community. What's the number one piece of advice that you'd give them? What is the one thing they should do to just start?
Yeah, I think that, like, I'll tell you how we started. Again, I didn't think starting this, and I've talked to other community founders, like, it's very rare to like, and the analogy I like to use is you want to build the next Tesla, but you have no idea how complicated really a Tesla is. And if you start building that, you're going to end up with something else because that's how life goes, right? Like you end up making a Model 4 truck or like, you make something a little bit different. So with community, it's really just pull together like-minded people and see if there are resources or problems you can solve together. So ours started as Marketers Unite. It was literally because I had just joined QPilot, small bootstrap company, solo marketer. And I wanted to meet regularly with other marketers because I hate learning from blogs and YouTube videos on how to like build a landing page. Like I already know all the crap that's on there. I want somebody very quickly to tell me, no, don't use this or this or this. Go use this. This is the best landing page builder, and this is why. I've used these other 5. Don't waste your time. For what you were asking me, go do this. And that's what our group was. It was like 4 or 5 people having breakfast for a couple months. And then it was like 7 or 8 people having lunch for a little while. And then suddenly Patrick Williams is like, man, you should do like a lunch and learn, like a big thing. And the rest is history. It's like, but again, it's always coming back to like people feel seen there. They're able to connect with people there. The Slack group is like one of the most engaged and active Slack groups like that I've ever been in, is because people come in there to get problems answered.
Yeah, people can connect on their common problems that they're trying to solve.
Right.
And it's great to get solutions from somebody who's already been
Yeah,
through the problem.
and I've been asked this a lot recently too, is like, how do I start a community and stuff? And I do think that it's about like trying to bring some people together. I don't think people appreciate how long it takes to get traction, right? Like Marketers Unite ran like for quite a long time with very little. And then we were working with ShareHouse. And then, I blinked the other day, we're over like close to 950 like people on Slack. And the last time I looked, I thought it was 700. So,
Wow.
So it just takes time. It's about showing up. It's about being consistent over and over again. It's about getting feedback. That's how you build community. It's just connecting with people as much as possible.
Yeah, people underestimate the consistency on content, on community building, on a company, on products, everything.
Yep.
Just keep showing up. All right. Well, I appreciate all of the advice, all of the tips and tricks for subscription and building an audience. Thanks, Matt. Where can everybody find you? Where should we follow you?
Absolutely. So you can go to my website is thesubscriptiondoc.com. Got links to my newsletter, podcast, and stuff like that. Or just look for me on LinkedIn or Twitter, Matthew Holman, Subscription Doc. I'll come right up.
Okay. And then the Commerce Catalyst Summit, that's coming up in September, right?
Yeah. Yep. ccatalyst.co. I could have made the website a little more confusing, but or Google Commerce Catalyst Utah, and it'll come up as well. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, we're excited to attend that one.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thanks for coming on, Matt.
Thank you, man.